how do you clean these double hung windows with these huge screens that are hinged at the top that you really can't remove without unscrewing them, which I'm not going to do. Okay, and you don't need to. So to start off with, just clean the outside of the screen, get your wet towel and clean the outside. What I'm going to do now is clean the inside of the screen, so I'll show you how I do that. It's a lot more awkward. I use this pole to hold the screen out of the away from the window, and I'm actually very glad, as you'll see, that this is actually broken at the bottom, so exposing the the inside. Actually, I'll get you a closer look so you can see exactly what I've done. So as you can see, one end of the pole is sort of, wedged tightly there at the between the bottom of the window frame and the brickwork, and then the other end actually sits in. You can see why I'm glad I've got the hole in the pole, because that enables me to actually hold it in tight. So that's really not going to move now. And now that's comfortably, out of the way of the window. Okay, so it's a lot more awkward now to clean the inside of the screen, as you'll see, but I'll do my best. I freely admit that there are other ways of holding the screen away from the window. You may find somebody who can just hold it up and away for you, or you might be able to use a large object like a ladder or a chair to hold it away from the window. But there will be situations, for example, where you're up high, the window might be on the second story, or it might be a metre or two up, and it might be difficult to find an object that you can use that's large enough to use, or a person that's able to reach. In this sort of a situation, the pole does wonders. However, there is one danger associated with using the pole for this purpose. You may put stress on one of the hinges. In this particular case, there is a little bit of stress on the right hinge of the window, and that is why the part of the pole that is up against the window is actually positioned towards the middle of the window. That's to reduce that stress. A way of overcoming that problem, another way, is to have two poles, one on each side. However, that might just be a little bit awkward for you to stand and work and not accidentally knock one of the poles over. So as you can see, I just run the towel back and forth over the screen, and this towel is getting very, very dirty, as you can see. And when it gets really dirty, I just grab a clean one and just use the clean one, and then you can be sure that you're getting the screen cleaned sufficiently. Because if the towel's not getting dirty anymore, that means that the screen is no longer very dirty. Also clean around the frame too. Make sure you do that. Get all the spider webs off. So the screen is now fairly clean. So what remains on the outside is the window, which actually is probably easier than cleaning the screen itself on these particular windows. So I'll just clean that using my washer. Steel wool, fine grade steel wool, does not scratch glass. If there's any particularly difficult bits sitting on the window, I might use my scraper. I'll see how I go. Now, I warned earlier about not making sure that you don't put too much stress on one of the hinges using this method. I once had a situation where one of the hinges, or the screen on one side, actually came apart from the window, and I was up high on a ladder cleaning a second-story window. So if the house is old, if the windows are old and the screens are old, and the wood has started to break down, you have to be very, very careful using this method, because if you put too much stress on the hinge, you might find that the actual screen comes away from the window. So as you could see, I didn't need to use my scraper after all. It was just the washer, the steel wool, and of course the squeegee. Towels are useful for drying the edges. You know, you need a dry one and a wet one. So that's the way I work. The one by my waist is for drying the squeegee between each stroke. So this window now is actually perfectly clean on the outside. All that remains is to clean it on the inside, which will be pretty easy. And as you learned with this window, that what makes them tricky is the screens, because you can't remove them. They're sort of big and bulky. If you can get yourself something like this, especially if it has a hole at the bottom, even if you have to break the bottom to get the hole, that can come in very handy. So I hope you've learned something. And now let me tell you about the pole, the actual pole that I'm using to keep the screens away from the window, so that I can clean, well, A, the inside of the screens, and B, the outside of the windows. I'll just take this one back off. It is simply it's an all-purpose window cleaning tool, or you might even say an all-purpose cleaning tool. You can extend it or retract it, which means you've got you can actually, since you can adjust the length, you can get it to exactly the right length to keep that screen right out of the way. It is, as I say, an all-purpose window cleaning tool. You know, it's normally used for, you know, enabling you to reach windows that you can't reach comfortably by hand, and you need a bit of extension. So you can stick your washer on the end of it. You can stick your squeegee on the end of it, and in fact, even your scraper. So that's so you buy it exactly where you'd buy your window cleaning tools. It comes in different lengths. You know, some of them are much longer, and they could be 3-stage or even more, so they can be extended, you know, quite significantly. But for this purpose, for keeping a hinged screen off a double hung window, a short one is what you're after.